The Wind in the Willows. Part 1. Introduction to the characters and setting. In a quiet corner of the English countryside, where the sunlight danced on the rippling water, lived a mole. He was a humble creature who spent his days burrowing underground, enjoying the peace and solitude of his cozy home. One bright spring morning, Mole woke up from his winter sleep. He stretched his little legs and yawned widely. Today felt special, and he decided to leave his burrow for the first time in a long while. As Mole emerged from his home, he felt the warmth of the sun on his fur and smelled the fresh scent of grass. He looked around and saw flowers blooming in every color. The world above ground was full of wonder, and Mole felt a surge of excitement. He had always wanted to explore the fields and meadows outside his burrow. As he wandered along the riverbank, Mole met a water rat who was busy floating in a small boat. The rat was easygoing, with a cheerful smile and a twinkle in his eye. He waved at Mole and said, "Hello there. I'm Ratty. Would you like to join me for a ride on the river?" Mole was overjoyed. "Yes, I would love that," he replied, his eyes shining with happiness. As they paddled down the river, Mole was amazed by the beauty around him. The trees leaned over the water, and the birds sang sweetly from the branches. He felt as if he were in a dream. Ratty told Mole about his life on the river. "Every day is an adventure," he said. "I love to explore new places and meet new friends. There's always something exciting happening." Mole listened intently, feeling a little envious of Ratty's adventurous spirit. As they floated along, they came across a grand house by the riverbank. It was filled with laughter and music. "That's Toad Hall," Ratty explained. "It belongs to our friend Toad. He loves to throw parties and invite everyone over. But be careful. Toad can be a bit silly at times." Mole was curious about Toad. "What kind of creature is he?" he asked. Toad is quite extraordinary. He's charming, but he often gets himself into trouble because he loves shiny things and fast cars. He's always dreaming up some new scheme." Ratty chuckled. Just then, they heard a loud crash coming from Toad Hall. The two friends looked at each other in alarm. "Let's go see what's happening," said Mole, feeling a mix of excitement and concern. As they approached Toad Hall, they noticed a group of animals gathered outside, whispering and gossiping. Mole's heart raced with anticipation. He was about to meet Toad, and he had a feeling that life would never be the same again. In this idyllic setting, Mole had begun his journey, filled with new friends and unexpected adventures. Little did he know that his life was about to change in ways he could never imagine. Part 2. Mole's First Adventure. With the sounds of laughter and music filling the air, Mole felt a surge of curiosity. Ratty led him through the front door of Toad Hall. The interior was grand and beautiful, with rich tapestries hanging on the walls and a sparkling chandelier hanging from the ceiling. Mole's eyes widened in amazement. He had never seen anything like it. Toad was in the middle of a lively gathering, surrounded by animals of all shapes and sizes. His plump figure bounced around the room, and his voice was full of excitement. "Welcome, welcome, my friends," he called out, gesturing with his arms. "Come and enjoy the festivities. We have food, drinks, and games." Mole felt a bit shy in the bustling crowd, but Ratty nudged him forward. "Toad is a wonderful host. Don't be afraid to join in." With that encouragement, Mole took a deep breath and stepped into the celebration. As he mingled with the other animals, Mole quickly found himself enjoying the atmosphere. He tried delicious treats like berry tarts and sweet cakes. Each bite filled him with warmth and happiness. Toad moved from group to group, sharing stories of his latest escapades, which were often filled with exaggeration and laughter. Suddenly, Toad jumped onto a table, raising his hands to capture everyone's attention. My dear friends, today I am going to reveal my latest invention, the fastest car in the world. The animals gasped, eyes wide with anticipation. Is it really fast? Mole asked Ratty, his voice barely above a whisper. Oh yes, Toad is always dreaming up wild ideas, Ratty replied, grinning. But they often lead to trouble. As Toad continued his speech, Mole felt a mix of excitement and concern. What kind of trouble could a car cause? He wanted to see this invention for himself. After the speech, Toad led the group outside to a large garage. With a grand flourish, he unveiled his new car. It was bright red with shiny wheels that sparkled in the sunlight. Behold! Toad exclaimed, his eyes gleaming with pride. The Toadmobile! The crowd cheered, and Mole felt a rush of adventure. Can I try it? He asked, his heart racing with excitement. Toad grinned. Of course. Everyone should have a chance to feel the wind in their fur. With that, Toad helped Mole climb into the driver's seat. It felt strange but exhilarating. Just press the pedal and steer, Toad instructed. Mole's paws trembled with anticipation. Taking a deep breath, Mole pressed down on the pedal. The car shot forward, faster than he had ever imagined. The wind whipped through his fur, and he squealed with joy. He was truly flying. However, the excitement quickly turned to panic. Mole struggled to steer, the car zooming around the courtyard. Help! I can't control it, he shouted as it swerved dangerously close to a flower bed. Toad's laughter rang out as he chased after Mole. Just turn the wheel. You can do it. Mole's heart raced as he finally managed to turn the wheel. The car skid to a halt, narrowly missing the flowers. He breathed a sigh of relief, his heart pounding. The other animals burst into laughter, clapping for him. That was amazing, Ratty exclaimed, patting Mole on the back. You were so brave. Mole smiled, feeling proud and exhilarated. His first adventure outside his burrow had been incredible. He realized that life was full of surprises, and he couldn't wait for what came next. Part 3. The Introduction of Toad. Toad was not just any animal. He was a character full of life and energy. He loved fancy things and often acted without thinking about the consequences. As Mole settled into his new world, he began to understand just how unique Toad really was. Toad lived in a grand house called Toad Hall, which stood proudly by the riverbank. The house was spacious and elegant, with colorful gardens that bloomed all year round. It was a place where laughter echoed and stories were shared. Toad was known for throwing the most exciting parties, and everyone wanted to be part of his adventures. The first thing that struck Mole about Toad was his style. He wore the finest clothes, often with a bright waistcoat and a top hat perched on his head. Toad is always the best dressed, Ratty whispered to Mole, chuckling. But he can be a bit much sometimes. Toad loved to boast about his latest fancies and hobbies. One day, he would be into boating, and the next, he would have a new passion for painting. I am the best at everything, Toad would declare, his voice booming with confidence. Despite his over-the-top personality, Mole couldn't help but feel drawn to Toad's enthusiasm. There was something infectious about Toad's joy. Life is for living, Toad would say, encouraging everyone around him to join in on his next big idea. However, Toad's wild spirit often led him into trouble. Mole soon learned that Toad had a habit of jumping from one craze to another without considering the risks. Just last week he bought a motor car, Ratty explained with a shake of his head. He thinks he's a racing champion now. Mole listened, wide-eyed. A motor car? What's that? He asked, feeling a mix of curiosity and concern. Oh, it's a fast vehicle that can go on the road, Ratty replied, smirking. But Toad doesn't drive very well. He tends to get into accidents. Just as Ratty finished speaking, Toad came rushing into the room, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Guess what, everyone? I just ordered a brand new car. It will be the fastest and most luxurious one you've ever seen. Mole felt a mix of admiration and apprehension. He couldn't help but wonder if Toad would ever slow down long enough to enjoy the simple pleasures in life. But Toad seemed to thrive on the thrill of the next big adventure. The other animals cheered, caught up in Toad's excitement. Let's have a race. One of them shouted, and the room erupted with applause and laughter. Toad stood tall, beaming with pride. I will win, of course. But you can all try to keep up. Mole watched the scene unfold, feeling both amazed and slightly anxious. He realized that Toad's larger-than-life personality would lead them into many unpredictable situations. There was never a dull moment with Toad around, and Mole couldn't help but feel eager for whatever adventures lay ahead. As the party continued, Toad went on about his plans for the new car, outlining a grand road trip with friends. Mole smiled, caught up in the excitement, but also aware that adventure with Toad was never without its challenges. Adventure awaits, Toad exclaimed, raising his glass. Mole raised his glass too, feeling the thrill of the unknown. With Toad leading the way, he knew life would be anything but ordinary. Part 4. Toad's Wild Adventures. Toad's wild adventures became the talk of the riverbank. With each new day, Toad took his friends, Mole and Ratty, along on his exhilarating escapades, which often led them to unexpected and sometimes chaotic situations. One sunny morning, Toad rushed into the room, bursting with excitement. Today is the day. We are going on an adventure like no other. He danced around the room, his arms flailing in the air. Mole looked at Ratty, who simply shrugged with a grin. What's the plan this time, Toad? Ratty asked, already preparing himself for whatever scheme Toad had in mind. Toad Hall is too quiet today. We must go on the river. I've rented a magnificent boat. Toad exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with joy. The thought of a boat ride thrilled Mole, and he quickly grabbed his hat. Let's go, he shouted, feeling the excitement building inside him. As they made their way to the river, Toad's enthusiasm was contagious. He spoke of all the fun they would have, imagining races against other boats and exploring hidden corners of the river. I will be the captain, and you will be my loyal crew, Toad declared, puffing out his chest with pride. When they reached the riverbank, Toad's boat was grand, with shiny oars and a beautiful sail. Isn't it the most wonderful boat you've ever seen? Toad asked, his voice full of pride. Mole and Ratty nodded, though they could see that it needed a little polishing. As they climbed aboard, Toad took the helm. He waved his arms dramatically and shouted, "All aboard!" Ratty laughed. Just be careful, Toad. Remember the last time you tried to steer a boat? But Toad was too caught up in his excitement to listen. They set off on the river, and Toad steered with confidence, shouting orders to Mole and Ratty. Row faster. We need to pick up speed. But soon, Toad's lack of experience began to show. The boat zigzagged through the water, splashing everywhere. Mole giggled, while Ratty tried to keep the boat steady. "Toad, watch where you're going," he warned, but Toad just laughed, enjoying the thrill of the adventure. Suddenly, they rounded a bend and encountered a group of swans. Toad, feeling bold, decided to race them. "Look at us go," he shouted, urging his friends to paddle faster. The swans, however, were not pleased. They flapped their wings and honked loudly, causing Toad to panic. "Oh no, they're after us," he yelled, his face turning pale. The swans chased after them, and the boat rocked dangerously. Mole and Ratty worked hard to keep the boat steady while Toad flailed about, shouting orders. "Faster, faster," he cried, but it was too late. The boat tipped, and they all fell into the river with a loud splash. Emerging from the water, they couldn't help but laugh. Toad's wild adventure had taken an unexpected turn, but their spirits remained high. They climbed back into the boat, dripping wet but filled with joy. "That was the most exciting thing I've ever done," Toad declared, his enthusiasm undeterred by the mishap. As they drifted back to shore, Toad continued to plan their next adventure. "Next time, we should try camping by the river. I'll bring all the best things," he said, his imagination running wild. Mole and Ratty exchanged glances, knowing that life with Toad would always be filled with unexpected adventures and plenty of laughter. Toad's wild adventures brought joy and excitement to their lives, even if they often ended in chaos. For Mole and Ratty, it was all part of the fun. With Toad leading the way, they knew that every day would be a new adventure, filled with laughter and unforgettable moments. Part 5. The Weasels and Toad Hall. Toad Hall, with its grand architecture and sprawling gardens, stood proudly by the riverbank. It was a place of many wonderful memories for Toad, filled with laughter, friendship, and a touch of mischief. But as Toad's wild adventures continued, a shadow loomed over his beloved home. Rumors had spread about a band of sly weasels who were planning to take over Toad Hall. One sunny afternoon, as Mole and Ratty lounged on the riverbank, Toad burst onto the scene, his face flushed with excitement. "You won't believe what I heard," he exclaimed, waving his arms wildly. "The weasels are coming to Toad Hall. They want to make it their home." Mole's eyes widened. "What? Weasels? They're not very friendly creatures," Ratty frowned, shaking his head. "We need to warn everyone. They can't take over Toad Hall." Toad, however, seemed unfazed by the news. "Let them come. I'll show them that Toad Hall belongs to me," he declared, puffing out his chest. But deep down, he felt a twinge of worry. He loved his home and didn't want to lose it to those tricky weasels. Later that day, as the sun began to set, Toad, Mole, and Ratty arrived at Toad Hall to prepare for the weasels' arrival. They planned to hold a meeting with the animals of the riverbank to devise a strategy to protect their home. The trio gathered in the great hall, where Toad stood at the front, trying to appear confident. "Listen up, everyone," he shouted. "We must band together to defend Toad Hall from the weasels." The room filled with chatter as the animals expressed their concerns. "What if they break in?" asked a timid rabbit. "They're so sneaky," a badger added, looking worried. Toad waved his arms to quiet them down. "We have to outsmart them. We must prepare traps and clever tricks." As night fell, the animals worked hard to set up defenses around Toad Hall. They placed nets near the entrances, set up silly signs to confuse the weasels, and even arranged a guard system where different animals would take turns keeping watch. Toad felt a surge of excitement. "We will show them that Toad Hall is not to be messed with," He cheered, his confidence growing. The following morning, the atmosphere was tense. The weasels were expected to arrive at any moment. Toad paced back and forth, trying to keep his mind off the impending confrontation. What if they're really fierce? Mole asked, looking nervously at Ratty. They might just take over. Just then, the ground shook slightly, and a rascally group of weasels appeared at the end of the lane. They moved in a sneaky line, whispering and chuckling amongst themselves. Toad's heart raced as he spotted their twitchy noses and beady eyes. "They're here!" he exclaimed, feeling a mix of fear and excitement. "Everyone, get ready." The weasels approached Toad Hall, looking around with curious eyes. They were led by a particularly sly weasel named Wally, who smirked as he approached Toad. "Well, well, well, what do we have here?" he sneered. "Looks like a little party. Are you going to share your nice haul with us?" Toad stepped forward, trying to sound brave. "This is Toad Hall. You cannot just take it from us." He puffed out his chest again, trying to project confidence. "We are ready for anything you throw at us." The weasels laughed, their voices sharp and mocking. "Ready? Against us?" Wally grinned, looking at his gang. "We'll take this haul without any trouble at all." With that, the weasels rushed forward. But Toad and his friends were prepared. As the first weasel stepped into the hall, he got caught in a net, flailing and shrieking in surprise. "What is happening?" he yelled. The animals cheered as one by one. The weasels fell into their clever traps, caught off guard by the unexpected defenses. "Look at them! They are no match for our teamwork!" Ratty shouted, filled with excitement. Toad felt a sense of pride swell within him. They were winning. After a chaotic battle of wits and traps, the weasels were finally chased away, running back down the lane, their tails between their legs. Toad Hall was safe. Toad, Mole, and Ratty cheered, their laughter ringing through the halls. "We did it!" Toad shouted, doing a little dance. "Toad Hall is ours!" The animals celebrated together, their spirits high. Toad knew that with the support of his friends, they could face any challenge. "Next time, we'll be even more ready," he said with a grin, his heart full of joy and relief. Part 6. The Final Confrontation and Resolution. The sun had just started to set when Toad, Mole, Ratty, and Badger gathered in Toad Hall's grand living room. They had successfully chased the weasels away, but something didn't sit right with Badger. "I'm afraid this isn't the end of it," he said, his deep voice echoing off the walls. "The weasels are tricky creatures. They might return with a new plan." Toad, still buzzing with excitement, waved off Badger's concern. "Nonsense. We sent them running. There's no way they'll come back." But deep down, a small part of him wondered if Badger was right. As the evening wore on, the four friends sat together, discussing plans for improving their defenses. Mole, always cautious, suggested they create stronger barriers, while Ratty thought it would be a good idea to set up lookouts along the riverbank. But just as they were starting to feel safe, they heard a strange noise outside. Thud, thud, thud. The ground trembled slightly. Mole jumped to his feet. "What was that?" he asked, his eyes wide with fear. The noise grew louder, and suddenly, the rascally weasels appeared on the horizon again, this time in even greater numbers, armed with sticks and clubs. Leading them was Wally the Weasel, grinning like a villain from a storybook. "They're back," Toad gasped, his heart pounding in his chest. "And there are more of them this time." Badger, ever calm and collected, stood up and said firmly, We must stand our ground. We've defeated them before, and we can do it again." His tone was commanding, and the other animals nodded, steeling themselves for the final confrontation. Outside, the weasels surrounded Toad Hall. Wally called out from the front of the group, "Toad, we've come for the hall. You can't stop us this time." His voice was full of confidence, as if victory was already in his grasp. Toad, despite his earlier fear, refused to back down. He climbed to the top of the stairs and shouted, "Toad Hall will never belong to you. We're ready for you this time." Wally smirked. "Is that so? Let's see about that." With a signal from their leader, the weasels charged toward the front door. But just as they reached the entrance, a loud clang echoed through the air. The animals had prepared an ingenious trap. A large, heavy net dropped from above, catching the first few weasels in its grasp. They struggled and thrashed, but the net held firm. "Ha! Got you!" Toad yelled, his fear turning into pride. However, Wally was not caught. He slipped around the side of the hall, determined to break in through one of the windows. Badger saw him and quickly whispered to Ratty and Mole, "Follow me. We must stop Wally before he sneaks in." The three friends rushed to the back of the hall, where they found Wally trying to pry open a window with his sharp claws. Badger, being the largest and strongest, grabbed Wally by the collar and pulled him away from the window. "Not so fast." Badger growled. Wally, surprised by Badger's strength, tried to wriggle free, but Mole and Ratty quickly tied him up with a thick rope. "You're not going anywhere," Ratty said triumphantly. With Wally captured and the rest of the weasels stuck in the net, the battle was over. The animals had won. Toad, feeling bolder than ever, marched outside to face the trapped weasels. "This is what happens when you mess with Toad Hall," he declared, puffing out his chest with pride. The weasels, defeated and embarrassed, begged to be let go. "We're sorry. We won't come back. Just let us go," they pleaded. Toad, feeling generous, nodded. "All right, but only if you promise never to return to Toad Hall again." The weasels quickly agreed, and after being released from the net, they scampered off, tails between their legs, vowing never to cross paths with Toad and his friends again. With the weasels gone for good, the animals of Toad Hall celebrated their victory. They gathered in the grand living room, sharing stories of bravery and teamwork. Toad, though proud of himself, knew that without his friends, he never would have succeeded. "Toad Hall is safe once more," Badger said, raising a glass to the group, "and we all had a part in defending it." Mole smiled at his friends and said quietly, "It's not just Toad Hall that's safe. It's our home. We'll always protect it, together." And with that, the animals knew that no matter what challenges came their way, they would always stand united, ready to face anything that threatened their peaceful life by the river. Part 7. Reflection and Friendship. As the excitement of the victory settled, Toad, Mole, Ratty, and Badger sat together in the cozy warmth of Toad Hall's grand living room. The flickering fire cast a soft glow across the room, and the air was filled with a sense of peace and accomplishment. It had been a long, tiring day, but it was also a day that had strengthened their friendship. Toad, feeling more humbled than he had in a long time, leaned back in his armchair. He looked around at his friends, the ones who had stood by him, even when he had been reckless and self-centered. "You know," he began slowly, "I've been a foolish toad in the past. I've made mistakes and I've caused a lot of trouble. But today I learned something important." He paused, choosing his words carefully. It's not about how grand my home is or how many wild adventures I have. What really matters is having good friends who will stick by you, no matter what." Mole nodded thoughtfully. He had never been one for adventure, but the journey with his friends had taught him the importance of bravery and stepping out of his comfort zone. "I used to be afraid of what's out there," Mole said quietly. "But with you all, I found courage. We faced challenges together, and I feel stronger because of it." Ratty, ever the practical one, smiled warmly. "That's the thing about friendship, Toad. It's not just about the good times. It's about being there for each other when things get tough. Like today, when the weasels came, none of us could have handled it alone. But together, we were unstoppable." Badger, the wise old friend who had guided them all, leaned forward. "It's true, Toad. We've all learned something today. You've shown us that even though you can be headstrong, you also have a big heart. And Mole, you've discovered strength in yourself that you didn't know you had. As for you, Ratty, you've always been reliable. But today you reminded us how important it is to stay calm in difficult times." Toad listened carefully, his heart swelling with gratitude. For the first time, he truly understood the value of his friends. They weren't just companions on his adventures. They were the family he had chosen. The fire crackled softly as the friends sat in companionable silence for a moment, reflecting on the events of the day. The victory over the weasels was important, but what truly mattered was the bond they shared. "Toad Hall may be mine," Toad said finally, "but it's our home. All of us, and I promise, from now on, I'll be a better friend. I won't let my pride get in the way again." Mole smiled warmly, Ratty clapped Toad on the back, and Badger gave an approving nod. "We believe you, Toad," Badger said. "And remember, no matter what happens, we'll always be there for each other." The night grew darker, and the friends eventually drifted off to bed, knowing that they had not only won a battle, but had also grown closer through the experience. As the moon rose high in the sky, Toad Hall stood tall and proud, a symbol of friendship, courage, and the lasting power of working together. And so, the four friends, Toad, Mole, Ratty, and Badger, ended the day not just as companions, but as a true team, bound by loyalty, respect, and the adventures they had shared.